Welcome back to another exciting episode of Iron Therapy. I am Dave Palumbo, and I'm joined, as always, by our RX Muscle staff therapist, Lesley Timbol, on this beautiful Monday afternoon here. How's it going up there in Canada?
Pretty good. It's finally starting to get a little warmer, Dave.
Yeah, we had like 95 degree days. It actually rained here for the first time in a while, which was good, but that's what happens when you're in Canada. I know you're trying to escape from Canada, so I'm not trying to rub your face in it or anything like that. But
and then the gas prices here are horrendous. It's like over $100 to fill my car with gas.
I was talking about how much I had to rent a truck this past week to go pick up some cages for my snakes, and I was saying how expensive the gas was, and someone told me, "Oh, Canada's way worse." Well, I figure you guys have gas up there. How come it's so expensive? You can kind of just dig into your backyard and get the gas right out of it.
I don't know. If I could work in the U.S., I'd walk there.
Well, today we have a special guest joining us, John Bravo. Who I'm going to add into our little conversation here. What's up, John?
How are you guys?
Hey, John.
So, John, you are one of the people who had been reporting on the whole Calum von Moger situation that took place over the last couple of days, and I figured you had some insider information, so I wanted to kind of bring you on. I know Nick Trigili had originally broken the story, but I think it's important that we talk about this because this is something that can happen pretty much to anyone in our industry, and this is a guy who was super successful. He had he got into the movies. He has over 3 million followers on Instagram. He's a guy who's a role model, and he just seems to be, Lesley and I talked about this on a previous show. He seems to be going in the wrong direction down. What do you know about this story? Give our fans, maybe for people who haven't been following what's going on, kind of like the summary of where we're at.
Well, it's a sad story, and if you think back upon it, okay, he had those injuries with his bicep tear first, and then he ended up injuring his leg on the cliff. And it seemed like it's a domino effect from what happened there because his dog, actually before his dog died, he got a woman pregnant out of wedlock. And, as a guy, what's the number one nightmare in life is to have a kid with a woman that's not going to be in your life. So that happens. And then a tragic accident happens with his dog. He comes home and his dog ate a bag that he had out. And it ended up choking and dying. And he loved that dog more than anything. Then what happened was about a month or two, he made a video saying, he was in a deep depression from losing his dog. He ended up drinking alcohol every single night to mask his pain. And listen, you combine the depression from the woman, from the dog, then you start drinking alcohol. It's the gateway to whatever else happens in your life, right? He ends up from there. It's a domino effect. He ended up on cocaine, meth, partying, heroin. And to me, he was trying to mask his pain from the kid and from the other issues. And then, you combine performance-enhancing drugs. And and I know, and I had experienced myself what happens when my estrogen goes up to hell, okay, on just a small dosage of testosterone, what happened to my life. And I'm one of the most strong-willed people you'll ever meet in your life. And for it to take me down, others, it can do that. And he did so much. He was on so many other drugs that, meth, crystal meth, cocaine. I mean,
his brain chemistry had to be really screwed up.
100%. And now look what happened to him now. So now there's, it's not officially been reported, but he jumped out of a second story window. And I know for a fact he was high at the time. And I can't say 100% the reasons as to why, because we're waiting for some more information as to why he jumped out the window. Right. He jumps out the window, lands on the ground, and I know he had injuries prior. I can say this. He had injuries prior to jumping out the window, and there was other people there that witnessed this.
Wow.
He jumps out the window. He falls. He's critically injured. And he's in medically induced coma now.
So someone called an ambulance after obviously he jumped out the window.
Yeah, and he's in a medically induced coma, and you know why they do that to people, just like they did to Rich, to prevent injuries to the brain from affecting him in the future. So now we're just waiting on word that he's going to be okay, but supposedly his spine was injured as well.
Was he unconscious when he landed?
I'm not sure if he was unconscious or not, but I know that he could not walk off the scene.
Now, why didn't? How come this hasn't been picked up by more news agencies?
I was wondering the same thing, and I was talking to Nick, and Nick is doing great on this story, and I've been talking to him a lot since it happened. And the reason why is because, and a lot of people I talked to in Australia as well, they said that it's not like America. Even Lee Priest is not that big of a celebrity there in Australia as he is here in the United States. The same for Calum von Moger. So it's not something that
Calum's got 3.5 million.
I know.
Followers. I mean, you would think that.
Supposedly, that's what all the Australian people that I've spoken to are saying, that he's not as big in Australia walking around like he is here in the United States.
You still think people would pick up that story? Anyone jumping out of a second story window seems like it's a newsworthy story. Lesley, Let me ask you this question. When people get depressed and when things don't go right in their life, even though it seems like to the rest of the world that they're on top of the world, is this a pretty, common, cause and effect type of thing to see someone kind of spiraling down that rabbit hole of like drugs, substance abuse and stuff like that?
It is, especially for people like Calum, because he's resurrected to a certain status and he knows he wants to keep on top. There's that, a lot of people have a fear of failure, but there's also a fear of success. Mm-hmm. So what I mean by that is to try to be on top and not just be relevant, but, continue pushing yourselves and pushing that envelope. When you have these other life stresses that come into place, it produces an extra stress on top of that. So the body and the mind can only handle so much stress. And at some point it shuts down and people go into various coping mechanisms, some healthier than others. Calum obviously went down a rabbit hole numerous times. He didn't have the proper supports in place. So my biggest piece right now is to saying, obviously put him in our prayers for a recovery, not just physically, but mentally. And hopefully we can talk about this a little bit later, but what needs to be put in place for Calum in order to make that recovery when he does come to, basically.
Now, John, another thing that I saw reported was that, Calum had posted, I guess, on his Instagram story or something like that he felt like his parents were not supporting him and that he felt abandoned in a sense. And, I would have to imagine, before I'm going to let you comment, but I have to imagine that, for your parents to kind of say, hey, get out of here, we don't want you here. He must have been pretty bad on drugs. Because I know that when people get on drugs and they start asking for money and they start, possibly stealing things, it's not a good situation to have to keep that person around your house,
I know his parents didn't want to support what he was doing. And, as a parent, a lot of people don't understand this who have not been in these situations. I have been through these situations with people close to my life. Yeah. And a lot of times for these people to get better, and Lesley, you've probably dealt with this a lot of times, people have to go down and fall down to their worst spot they are in their life for them in order for them to actually want to get sober and get help, right? So parents, a lot of times they cut off their kids. As a parent, you don't want to, but you have to. What other choice do you have in order to save your kid's life? And a lot of times parents don't, and the kids end up dying. But a lot of times parents do cut off the kid, and it ends up being the best thing they ever did for the kid.
Usually the parents don't cut the kid off until they've stolen something or done a million things, wrong. Parents shouldn't just say, oh, you know what, I think you're on drugs, don't come home anymore. It's usually because they've put them through the ringer. What do you know about this in terms of your life as a therapist, Lesley, with substance abuse and kids versus parents, and what is the right way to handle a situation like that?
Well, it needs to be tailored to the particular situation, but to what both of you said, parents don't usually at the first sign of trouble say to their kids, go out to the street. We don't want to have anything to do with you. This is after months, if not years, of repeated efforts on their part to try to get, in this case, Calum to make healthier choices. But, you can only tell somebody so many times, especially an adult, what they should do or what we recommend. It's up to Calum to make the decision what he chooses to do or not do. So you can help. It's not to say I would have a hard time believing. Now, obviously, again, I don't, just to put it out there for people who didn't see our previous episode, I don't know Calum, nor do I know his family. However, I would be very hard pressed to believe that his parents didn't try to talk to him. His friends didn't try to talk to him. So yes, if there's pushback, does it mean they give up? No, but I have a feeling that they've tried numerous times. And like what you were saying, Dave, is that, you know, whether it's him stealing money or stuff that he could sell from the house or damaging the house, like a lot of things had to happen for them to probably get to the point of saying, we can't condone this behavior. Because the worst thing you can do with an addict, and I'm not saying don't give them chances, but is to what we call in counseling, enable their behavior. What I mean by that, for those who aren't familiar with it, is to saying, okay, we'll support you, but you can still do drugs. You know, and it's kind of like, well, that doesn't help the situation. So what you were saying, Johnny, is, yeah, you gotta, it's called tough love. It sucks. It doesn't feel good to do it, but they're either going to die with your help or without your help. So if there's that chance, and I hope it's not 50-50, but let's say for the sake of argument, it was 50-50, that they hit that rock bottom, some make it and some don't. It sucks. But if there's a chance that someone's going to make it through tough love, go that route, because the other route, you're going to have 100% failure without the proper supports. So yeah, unfortunately, with a lot of things in life, not just drugs, we have to learn the hard way. We're human beings. We're stubborn.
Yep.
Do you, John, think that Calum started using drugs, maybe not to the level that he was at, you know, recently, even back when, I mean, he was making very bad decisions. I mean, trying to rappel off the side of a cliff. I mean, when you have no real mountain climbing experience, it's not really the wisest decision. I mean, you have to be a little nuts to do that.
Yeah. I mean, Dave, you know, listen, we all know people in life. Some people love to take risks in what they do in life each day, right? And then some people like me drive the speed limit, even though I drive a fast car, because I'm scared I'm going to get hit, because I've dealt with things in my past. There's just some people in life who take those risks. And, you know, I don't know if there's a relation between those types of people and people who get addicted to drugs, because like I said, I was putting myself in the situation and I dealt with something in my life, and I'm a strong-willed person, right? But a small thing, you know, put me into a depression. I didn't go the route to go to substances. I fought it the best I can naturally, right? Through going through the gym, trying to, you know, I do smoke marijuana and that helps me, but I don't believe that that's a drug that can cause addiction issues and things like that. But I could have gone that route easily and I didn't. And I think those types of people, again, I don't know if there's a relation between the two. You get sucked up into the drugs, you end up getting on alcohol. It leads to different drugs, harder drugs. And, you know, one thing I want to touch on is that people don't understand. You know, people look at Calum. He's a good-looking guy. He's got everything at his hands, right? He's got the world in his pocket. They look at him, they go, what reason does he have to be depressed in life, right? People say these things all the time, you know, and they don't understand what's going through someone's mind. They don't understand, and Lesley, you can touch on this, the mental aspect of these things, of the pressure of being famous, okay, because he is famous in this industry, the pressures of all that, dealing with all the things that happen online, the people making videos, negative videos, every aspect of your life. This has an effect on you. People don't understand it. So I want to touch on that. Lesley, I want to hear what you would have to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, that goes to my point, Johnny, about that fear of success. I mean, everyone wants to climb that pinnacle, but once you get there, how do you stay on top? That's actually a different level of stress. You speak to any Olympic athlete, you know, and yeah, if you qualify for the Olympics, that's awesome. But when you're in the Olympics, you want to win. You don't want to win third. You don't want to do second. You want to win first. And then when you get to first, it's like, how the hell do you keep it? That's much harder. So when you get to that notoriety like Calum did, it's hard to stay on top, even if he was a normal person. And I mean, when I mean normal, I mean average person. Losing a pet. I mean, pets are more loyal than people. Okay. And the thing is, to lose a pet is devastating, because there are fur babies, you know, they're better than human beings in my book. Not that I don't like human beings, but I mean, it's just,
I'm with you on that one.
But when you lose an animal,
yep,
like, it's heart-wrenching. Like, that's your best friend. Like, it's on a different level. If you're not a pet owner, it's hard to really relate. But anyone who has a dog can understand, or at least can appreciate that losing your pet is a horrible feeling. You add all this other stuff, like you said, you know, that child out of wedlock, and, you know, all these other stresses in his life. that's just compounded on layer upon layer upon layer. So it was a disaster, unfortunately, waiting to happen. And, you know, whether there were people who may have tried to get into his ear early on and he chose not to listen, and maybe he did listen some of the time. We don't know. He probably did listen some of the time. But as stress is built on, it's I can't deal with this pain. I have to shut it off. It's too hard to deal with. I have to numb my brain. And that's why a lot of people fall into the substance abuse.
Yeah, but I think, you know, as a community, people, you know, everyone, they see a story like this, right? They want to see somebody fall.
Yes.
And to me, that's such a sad thing, because as a community, if people put together, you know, came together to be positive, and seeing somebody like this, you know, who's going through something like this, instead of making negative videos, making fun of the guy, you know, wanting to see a guy like this fall, because they always want to see the people that are on top go down. It would help them so much. You know what I mean? And that's a part of the problem of this community and a lot of communities, but for some reason in fitness, I see it more than others.
And you know what, Johnny, that's a great point. If anything, I want people to rally together to be in support of Calum. Calum isn't the sum of all of his behaviors. He's a personality. He has a good heart. And again, I don't know him, but based on what I've seen, you know, he did have that healthy lifestyle. He did want to try to, you know, do some good in this world. And, you know, he made some unhealthy choices, yes, but that's not him as a person deep down as far as the essence. So I want to be able to support. And, you know, I think all of us, especially in the bodybuilding and fitness community, we should be supporting each other, not tearing people down. And, you know, while I think more the trolls of this world are people who are not fitness individuals, the ones that are fitness individuals that use their social platforms to tear people down, it's hard to respect those people.
Yeah. You know, one thing I wanted to bring up though is, you know, you could be on, I mean, look, Craig Titus and Kelly Ryan were on meth, and I mean, they killed a woman, you know, and then try to run for it, thinking they were going to get out of the country, you know, and get away with it. I mean, it obviously warps the way you think about things and see reality. However, I mean, Calum is in a house on the second. I don't even know whose house that was. I mean, John, maybe you know.
I think it may have been a family-owned house or a friend's house. I'm not 100% positive.
Okay, and he was alarmed enough to jump out of a window, which he knew was probably on the second floor. And so he not only did he have to break through the glass to jump through this window, he also knew he was going to land at least, you know, whatever it is, 20 feet below. I don't know how high up the house was. To do that, you would have to think that even if you're on drugs, that you thought your life was in jeopardy in some way, because even if someone was there to beat you up or to do something, you know, demand money from, you know, I mean, I would rather take a beating, you know, than jump out of a window and potentially die.
I mean, also, Dave, too, though, if you wanted to harm yourself, I mean, that's another thing to factor into it too. We don't know all the details.
Easier ways of harming myself than jumping through a window, you know, on the second story. You know, I was once, when I was in medical school, I was doing a psychiatry rotation in one of the hospitals, and I was on this. They had like a panic squad, I think it was called, or something like that. And if people were going to, you know, threaten to kill themselves, they would send out the panic squad, and I had to work on it once a month. I think it was once every 2 weeks. And we went out to this call, and I've told the story before. It was about a 6 or 8 foot, you know, apartment complex, and there was someone on the second story balcony threatening to jump. And we went up there with the therapist, and we were talking. They were trying to talk the guy down, and they're like, this guy was just being ridiculous. And finally, this therapist said to him, he said, you know, let me ask you a question. Do you want to kill yourself? He's like, yes. He's like, why didn't you go up to the 6th floor and jump? If you wanted to kill yourself, the second story doesn't guarantee that you're going to die. You might break your legs, and that you're not going to probably kill yourself. And the person it blew the guy's mind that he just got off the balcony and walked into the apartment building, because he really wasn't trying to kill himself. He was trying to cry out for help, type of thing. I don't know. Do you think there's any relevance, Lesley, to the situation? Is this a cry out for help, what he did, or was this just like a really bad decision he made?
See, keep in mind is that
he's on the influence.
He was likely under the influence before this, so he's not thinking clearly. Do I think this was a premeditated attempt to kill himself? No, I don't. There's a bunch of pieces missing if that was the case. What it seems like is that he was scared obviously, whatever he was using, I don't know if anything was found. I don't know if they did blood work or what happened, but whatever he was on affected his perception of reality. So whether there was something real,
not to interrupt you, Lesley, I can't add that they induced him because not only the injuries that he suffered, but because of the chemicals that were in him.
okay.
So he wouldn't be in withdrawal, obviously.
Yeah.
So I mean, thank you for corroborating that, Johnny. So I mean and again, we don't know exactly what was in there, but there was enough in there that he was not in his right mind anyway. So again, whether he was, there was something imaginary, that something was chasing him and he had to run like heck, so it was just more of a survival mechanism, or there was a real threat. We don't know for sure, but regardless, you said he's in a medically induced coma. That's probably, if anything, and I hate to say this, but I mean, he needs a detox. And if this helps him detox, not that I wish anyone in a coma, but he needs this regardless.
But don't you think, Lesley, when he wakes up, he's going to be on pain meds anyway? I mean, he's obviously busted up his body pretty bad, I'm sure, on this jump. So it's like, it's not going to really be a detox for him because they're going to have to give him some pain meds, I'm assuming.
Some, yeah, but at least it won't be it'll be more controlled and he'll be in a controlled environment. But again, they can only do it for so long.
Right.
But then I would require him, I would suggest he go in some type of inpatient treatment program where because he's not in a stable enough place. Well, I'm even when he's out, to be able to do it on himself, to be in an outpatient unit, that would be a disaster because he'll just go right back to it. And then obviously, being in pain. I mean, I can't imagine the amount of pain. If he was not on painkillers, the agony he would be going through. So hopefully this will help heal the injuries to some degree. And we'll see. Like, I don't know how long I don't know medically how long you can keep someone in a medically induced coma before you have to bring them out. That I don't know.
Lesley, let me ask you this question. Subconsciously, what's going on? You mentioned earlier the pressure of success and being so successful. Maybe he just really couldn't handle it and didn't want it anymore. I mean, because let's look at forget the drugs. Let's look at what he's done over the last, couple of years. He was doing that silly 400-pound bicep curl with Chris Bumstead at Gold's Gym Venice, which is where he tore his bicep, I can't believe even Chris was involved in that, but that was number one. Then he tried to rappel off the side of a cliff, retore the bicep and the patella tendon. Now he's jumping out of a window. He did some other crazy stuff, driving around and on his Instagram. We were talking about it like about a month ago. I mean, is he trying to hurt himself so that he doesn't have to be that, Arnold 2.0 guy and he can kind of just, live a normal life? Is that maybe subconsciously what he's doing?
Is that a potential? Like, is that a possibility? It is, but I think a more probability, though, Dave, is that he hasn't been thinking straight for a long time. So I don't think this was a deliberate, conscious attempt of saying, I don't want to be famous anymore. Let me sabotage my life. Do I think that are there, points in time when anyone, whether it's Calum or anyone who has that famous kind of title with it, they get to a point of, can I just live my life and not have people hound me or report on me or like dissect my life every minute of every day? Sure. Did he, because I mean, it would be nice for him to be able to have some normalcy in his life and not have the public be aware of every movement he makes. Yeah. Do people go through that? Sure, they do. That's why they wear costumes, and they try to hide and try to be out in public.
Jean-Pierre Fuchs, if you guys remember when he did that photo shoot, John, where he was, Chris Lund was shooting him, he was squatting like 700 pounds, and he went down and tore both quads and like was crushed by the weight, like underneath it. He told me when I interviewed him in the last year or so, when we were looking back at that photo shoot, he said, I was on top of the bodybuilding world, I was doing well, but I felt so much pressure. He said, when I tore my quads and I knew pretty much that my career was over at that point, he goes, it was such a relief. He said that like most people would be crying and bawling and all upset and depressed. He goes, I wasn't. He goes, I was like, thank God I don't have to do this anymore. And so I thought that was like, it really kind of blew my mind when I heard it at the time. But I think for a lot of people, they don't want that's like, I love being under the spotlight. I like the pressure. I like trying to have to be better than myself and being the big guy. A lot of guys, they got into that situation. Then they realize, you know what? I don't really like the way it feels.
Dave, you know, it's funny you bring that up. I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, and I won't make this long, 4 or 5 years ago, when I first started this and I ended up on the news for WFN, I never expected it. I didn't even know the names that Richard Rodriguez was saying in the videos, right? I didn't know Roman Reigns. I knew Mark Wahlberg, but I never knew it was going to happen, what had happened. I wasn't ready for the camera. I wasn't ready to be comfortable. And it was really, really hard for me to follow up and make the videos that people's wanted. And that's why I took off for so many years, so I can relate to how that feels.
Lesley?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that you don't learn. People don't teach you what happens when you become famous. You think about all the positives, but what about the negatives? And again, where's the support for people like Calum or anyone, you know, trying to make it in this world? And when they finally get to that pinnacle, or they're on their way, where's the kind of guidance to say, okay, this is how you deal with those kind of people, these kind of situations. If you need to take a break, it's okay. Screw social media. It's okay. You know, and I mean, we could do a whole year's worth of social media stuff on.
Well, the reason I bring this up is because this is something that you would be great for as a therapist for people in our industry, that not are just people that are have anxiety or depressed, but people who actually are successful and maybe are having trouble dealing with that success, rather than sabotaging yourself or doing stuff, maybe getting involved in drugs to deal with the pressure. If you had someone to talk to and work through these issues, that, you know, you could probably, I mean, a lot of top celebrities and a lot of top sports figures have sports therapists that they go to on a regular basis to keep their head right. I mean,
well, don't forget too, they get into this at a young age. I was an older age. I was 35 when it happened to me, and I couldn't really deal with it 100%. I mean, this guy was 18, 19 years old, throwing the spotlight. I think he had like 1 million followers the first week that Nick Strength and Power made a video saying it looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you got to think that these are young kids that are growing up like this in the spotlight. It has to affect you 100% different. I mean, think about myself at 19 years old. It's a completely different person.
Yeah. Well, if anyone out there does feel the pressures of what they're undergoing, whether it be competing at the top elite level of bodybuilding, or just, you know, your top social media person, or even if you're not, and maybe you feel the pressure to have to be that person, it's important that you have someone to talk to. And if you want to seek out, you know, someone like Lesley, she's always available. I highly recommend her. I talk to her all the time about my issues, and she's great because she helps straighten your thinking process out. And the worst thing you can do is try to take drugs, like John said, to mask that pain or mask that uncertainty or mask something that you think is not there, or the pressures of life. And when you do that, it never ends well. So take that advice with what it may. Thank you, John, for joining us today. And of course, thank you, Lesley. And we will, of course, be back again next week. If you guys like this live format, let me know, and we'll continue to do it.
Also, prayers for Calum, too.
Yes, definitely. Yes. Prayers to his family as well, because they're the ones who have to now, you know, help him through this tough time. And if anyone has any suggestions for any future shows, leave them in the comments below, and we will definitely address those. For now, we will see you guys all again next week for another edition of Iron Therapy.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.